Right, so it's about to be live streamed. It's just setting up. Should be a link right here.
Can you hear the rain in my background?
I can't hear nothing.
Oh, good, because it's pouring where I'm at. Pouring. I got the window open. The breeze coming through.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned into the famous Dwayne's podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne. With me is a woman of many talents, a business owner, an indigenous American,
There you go.
just all around scholar on things of esoteric nature. Miss SJ, say what up to the people.
What's up? What's up? How's everyone doing? What's going on?
So we're talking about a topic that's been gaining a lot of traction, especially on Clubhouse, when niggas like to argue. And it's called Black Indians in America. We've since the resurgence of and popularity of being Pan-African with the likes of Umar Johnson and other people. No shade, of course. Everyone has this whole we African this, we African that. And it may not be all of that. It depends on, your history, not just history in general. So, I mean, it's I think it's common knowledge now, at least it should be, that, we've all been lied about our history, white, black, and indifferent. So SJ is very well read on this topic. And so we're just gonna ask a couple of questions and just kind of debunk some things about, just black people that are indigenous to America. So SJ, do you want to kind of go? How did you come to find all this information?
Well, for me, it was something I already knew when I was a young girl. Of course, like any family will tell you, they'll tell you your origins, your grandmother, your grandparents, parents, and I always knew that I come from a Cherokee background in America, and my paternal lineage is from Barbados. But born and raised in America, my American family told me who I was, even though we didn't necessarily, in my opinion, I guess outright practice the Cherokee way of life. It was still like something I knew, right? So you keep it in the back of your head, and you're like, oh, okay, I know I am Cherokee, but what does that mean? You know, and I because into the world, I'm just black. So it took for me getting more deeper into studying history, period. Trying to find enlightenment, knowledge of self. And I felt like I can't complete my journey on knowledge of self until I know who my ancestors are, period. A lot of us want to kind of dive away from reconnecting with our family because we may have trauma, we may have a lot of different reasons why we can't, reach out. But I wanted to kind of push past that, and I wanted to get to the bottom line of who I am and where I'm from. So I started to dive a little deeper as anyone else. I did a ancestry account. I built a family tree. I didn't do DNA tests, and I started building my family tree through records. We call that genealogy. And through the records, I found great history on my people. I mean, like a history that I'd have never imagined. Not saying my people are not great, but I just never imagined like, oh, that's my family did that. So one of the things I knew my great grandma told me growing up was that, and my mother told me, was that one of my ancestors was one of the original Harlem Globetrotters by the name of Willie Dumpson. And I'm like, that's cool. And as a little girl, my mom used to make sure I went to a lot of the Harlem Globetrotting games. And kind of like a tribute, for us to like pay respects to the team and to the pathway that a lot of our Negro colored players have led the way. And back then being a Negro or a color wasn't at that time, it wasn't seen as derogatory at that time. So from learning about that, then I learned about Thanksgiving. So my mom had this thing where Thanksgiving, we usually were sometimes spend it by ourselves. My mom was like, okay, we're not going to do turkey this year. We're going to do Cornish hens. And I'm like, why? I'm like, what's the sense? And she's like, we're doing Cornish hens because we are not going to celebrate something that the pilgrims did to the Indians. So, it was like our own little way. We had like these little things that we did to give thanks to our ancestors, whether we outright said we were these people or if we, kind of had little hidden things that traditions that we practice. Um, it was just our way to not let this memory die off. Eventually, from there, as I said, I did my family tree building. I found the records that led me on that path. So I found the ancestor that was the Globetrotter. From there, I went back and I got more history. One thing that I was told doing ancestry was that most of your melanated people in the northern region of America, which is like New York City, New England area, which is where I'm from, most of them come from the South. Now, through my mother's lineage, I did have a line. The Cherokee line comes from South Carolina, North Carolina region, the Carolinas. But my great grandma's lineage comes from Long Island, and I was curious because I'm like, why Long Island? I'm going further and further back in my records. I'm like, I'm getting at least to like 1800s, okay, early 1800s, and I'm like, okay, when did these people come to Long Island? I found the Cherokee and when they migrated up during the Great Migration, but I'm like, when did this side come up? That's what led me to research the last known town that I had on my records, which was in Port Washington, Long Island. When I researched that city, it was a website that popped up and it was talking about the African American heritage of this city. And on this website, it's also, they have one that's ran by the state and one that's privately ran. The one that's ran by the state pretty much has the same information that the privately ran one has, and there were interviews and photos of my ancestors on it. And before I got to the video recordings, or I mean the voice recordings, I showed my great grandma. I said, "Great grandma, I said, is this true? Like, are these our people right here?" And she's like, "Yep, that's us right there. That's us." He said, "That's my aunt, and that's one of my sisters." And I was shocked. They had these pictures online and a whole website dedicated to my family and other families of this region. So later, I had other family members come along the journey. I have a cousin who also is into keeping the family history and keeping the family ties together. And she kind of gave me more insight, more information. And I was still trying to, not that I couldn't accept it, I was just trying to figure out where does this fit in U.S. history that I'm trying to school? Like, where does it fit? It's not fitting. So when I got more of the information and I actually listened to the video recordings, um, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, some of the things I was hearing. Um, we had ancestry based on video recordings from my family. We have ancestry, our people come from the Poospatuck tribe, which their Poospatuck reservation is on Long Island. We also, which is a part of the Ungachong Nation, let me add that. Then we also have lineage to the Mohawk Indians. And the Mohawks right now, they're pretty much northern New York, close to Canada side. So I'm looking at a history that of people that are indigenous to Long Island and to the New York, New England region, which is something that totally blew my mind, right? And the further I'm digging, the more I'm digging, the more I'm finding out, the more it's starting to make sense. But it's still not putting me in the picture of what American history has taught me in school. So I would talk to my cousin about this, and she whispered to me one time, and she's like, I don't think our family was slaves. And I said, well, I'm doing my ancestry tree right now, and I have not yet come across documentation. No, I've helped others with their genealogy, and I've been able to find this information like that. Okay, I've been able to find the bill of sales, the slave schedules, the slave census that they had. Some families even upload what slaves or enslaved people that their families had ownership of. Me and my particular ancestry, I just couldn't find it, right? So I think that was more of a I'll say we call it a mine, FUCK, okay? Because once again, where do we fit in the American story? We don't live on a reservation. We're called Black. We don't have the slavery story, but our stories are not told in history books either. You know, we're just kind of skating through the society as Black people, or would they classify it as mulatto, or classify us as colored, or Negro, or Afro American, or African American. We're just skating through these different terminologies, but we don't fit. Really, we don't fit. We're like the outcasts. And that really, I say to this day, it really makes me trying to figure out, well, why didn't they want us a part of this story? Why don't they want melanated, quote unquote, out Indians, indigenous people, aborigines, whatever your preferred title to be? Why aren't we allowed to be taught or talked about in school? So that's pretty much how my journey started. Finding about my story, and then connecting with others who had a very similar story. And I knew I was not alone on this journey, pretty much.
Wow. So we were talking before we got before we went live. I definitely have some native in my family as well on my father's side. My grandmother looked, she just looked African. She had African features, but my great grandmother looked like an Indian chief. Like she just did. She just had very. That's just what had, what she had going on. She had the hair and everything. Her hair was flowing at like 90 something years old. Her hair was flowing. So, I so as a kid, I'd never put two and two together. She said, "That's a mom. That's a mom." Whatever. I wasn't thinking about genetics and how this person looks like that person. Like it didn't click. I was too busy thinking about kid stuff like toys and whatever. Girls and just goofy stuff. But in hindsight, it's just hindsight. It's those 2020s. It's like, yo, like she definitely was, and come to find out, there is like some Blackfoot, on that side of the family and other things like that. And so I think a lot of people don't realize their roots. We're told as Black people, which is a very broad term on purpose,
Yeah. Yeah.
that we all came from Africa, we all came from slaves, and this, that, and the third, and that's not necessarily the case. And it all depends on your family and your history. Yes, it's good to know about, MLK and Garvey and Malcolm X and all these other people, but how do they tie into your history? I think there's a lot of that. So um, I've actually met somebody when I was in Texas. He's from Louisiana, and he was saying that luckily his parents, I believe, kept their records, so they were able to like get like certain scholarships for school
Beautiful,
because
beautiful.
because of that. But a lot of people don't, and so it's just something that you need to. It's almost like a lot of these indigenous people are getting screwed out of their birthright, and that may be why they're trying to run with this whole y'all all was slave thing. So now, as far as the culture of, I guess, Native American, I know there's different levels to it. Um, there's also, I guess, whether the narrative that was sold to us about the red skin or the red man, is that like a fairy tale? Is that real? Is that accurate to some degree?
Well, I'll say that most of us in America, we have a red undertone to our skin color, especially in the sun. Whether you're a dark brown or to a lighter brown, that's considered a red tint, a red tone to your skin color. One of the other things that a lot of people have a misconception as is that American people have a phenotype to them. Okay, a lot of people don't recognize the American phenotype because there is this notion that we are mixed. So because we're all mixed with European, this is why we have the features that we have. It's not saying that this is not true, But one thing we have to also keep in consideration that there was such thing as Black Europeans, okay, that mixed in families as well. So, but the dominant phenotype of this land is very prominent, and you can put an American born person next to anybody from the Caribbean, from Africa, from Australia, and you can pick up the American every time. So that lets you know that we do have a distinct phenotype here in America. And I think that phenotype is why we don't get shown into mainstream media, because you have to ask the question, why is it that when you watch movies about Native Americans per se, do they always show the Southwest or Northwest tribes? You won't find much movies talking about, let's say, the Lenape people, the Lenape Indians. You're not going to find much movies dedicated to the Wampanoag Indians. And these are all East Coast tribes. And these are the first contact tribes. And when we say first contact, these are the tribes that make contact with the colonizers from the East first. So our story of even Thanksgiving, Pocahontas, it comes from East Coast tribes. But what you're finding is that a certain phenotype of people only get a chance to be shown as what it looks like to be native and indigenous to this land. If they were to do any type of publication or any type of production on East Coast tribes, the ones who went through the wars, who had to fight, the ones who was in the American Revolutionary War, the ones that were in the Civil War, the one that looked like my family, okay, they would have to then show melanated people. So another thing I've noticed too is that even on Facebook, I'm in a couple of Native American Facebook groups, and they always love to post like historical photos, right? It's ironic. They very rarely show historical photos of Choctaw people. Very rarely. They very rarely show historical photos of even Cherokees. Or what about the Tamuqua? Or what about the Wale Indians? Or what about the Yamasee? Very rarely do they show these people. Or even about the Accomacs. Or what about the Shinnecots? Or I mean, the list can go on and on. The tribe they just don't show. And because a lot of these historical photos, you're going to start seeing the skin color get darker, darker, and darker. So our phenotype, just like how we had to protest against European media that didn't want to show dark-skinned people in a proper light, it's the same thing we can now say about melanated so-called Indians or American Indians or indigenous Aborigines, is that they don't want to show us at all. Okay, it's not even a proper light. They don't want to show us at all. But I gotta give credit to celebrities that are slowly starting to come out and say things. Shout out to Erica Badu. If you pay attention to Erica Badu's Instagram, as of recent, she's been wearing her headbands. She's even had her daughter wear the Choctaw Nation shirt. You know, Kevin Gates walks around with 2 feathers in his head. So there's more and more people coming out and saying we here. Mainstream media is not going to show us because unfortunately, phenotypically, we're just not, I guess, acceptable right now.
So, do you think that there's more of a reason? I feel like it's deeper than rap. I really feel as if, again, it's just the whole trying to swindle melanated people out of, their birthrights, if you will, like, their rights to the land. I know I'm originally from Long Island, not originally, but I've been spent a good amount of my life in Long Island, and like every other town has a Native American name to it, such as Patchogue, Shinnecock, all of them joints, that all have some sort of Native American touch on it. And so, do you feel as if like they're doing that to kind of swindle like black people out of maybe their reservations, or just kind of just making amends? Because I think that the whole reparations thing that black people talk about, they feel they're entitled to, I feel like it's just too broad of a thing. They try to do it like that to try to group everybody together so that it's harder to really handle as opposed to, okay, so you guys are these kind of people, so that you get this, you guys are these kind of people, so you get that. Now, every other shade under the sun got they cut. The Asians, the Rhymes with News, all those other people got, their cut from America's wrongdoing, except the indigenous melanated people and the African Americans, or the Africans, what do you want to call them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it was all about selling the birthright of the land. I mean, we can just get into how we even get Europeans in our families, and it's not always through rape. See, history would teach us that we were just powerless people. We were just raped and pillaged, and we couldn't help ourselves. No,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these wars that were fought in this from the 15 to the, let's go 14, 15, 1600, even 1700. Okay, these were Indian wars being fought for territorial land. Okay, they were losing a lot of these wars. Okay, they was really on the brink of taking their asses back where the hell they came from. But this is where you start getting the birth of treaties being signed, peace agreement, um, agreement that, hey, okay, you take this piece of land, European, you take that, and we'll take the rest of this. And then treaties are being broken eventually. But I mean, overall, even with all that, being said, is that the power was always in the land here, right? They always had a goal to get the land here. And to my own theory is that they wanted what was underneath the land. And we can get into that a little later about maybe some of the real reasons why they really wanted to conquer America. But Europeans married in our families because they wanted a little bit of power. They wanted the right to the land. So you had European men marrying these native or indigenous women just so they can get the last name. Sometimes, in some cases, extremely, they would even kill the wife, and so that they can have the land passed to them now. Even some of the how I got Irish in my family, this we can speculate how a lot of these people that came here, because think about this, when they came here, a lot of them were poor. They didn't know how to farm. They didn't know how to cultivate any land. They don't know what they're doing. So they relied on us. They always relied on us. But even when you're seeing pictures of sharecroppers, or you're seeing pictures of people picking cotton, you have to question, is that a slave or was that a landowner working and doing what he's always been doing? We been had our own cotton fields. We always had our own corn fields. We always would go out with sugar cane. It's these things were already here. All they wanted to do was try to monopolize, as they do with everything. Nothing they do back then is different than what they do now. They take what's already being done and try to monopolize on it. So once they feel like they got a strong foothold, then they can just kind of push you out, kick you out, especially when they make you sign paperwork with legalese that you might not understand. And a lot of our people got tricked out of giving their land up. Some people were hung. A lot of the people that we saw being hanged during the Jim Crow era were landowners. They weren't just randomly picking people. They were strategically picking certain people in towns, hang them to cause a lot of people starting to migrate from these areas because they want the land. So this stuff was strategy. It was all strategy. Take your birthright. People heard about $5 Indians, right? People paying $5, taking and stealing the names of other Indians, white people doing this, even Black Europeans doing this too. So I don't want to forget them doing this just so they can get on the dolls rolls. Okay. So it was always a great effort for this land, any kind of way how. They were hustlers. I mean, I like to compare this even to people that choose to marry for citizenship, right? The tactic of marrying into Americans to take land or resources on your home, it's been going on for hundreds of years. And now people are doing it now. Hell, you got people that come from Middle East, or they come from sometimes Africa, and they'll want to marry American people so they can get resources in return. It's an exchange deal. Always has been. It's always been about business. And unfortunately, with our people, we're too giving, we're too nice, and it's almost like it becomes too late by the time we get pushed out of our own areas. So I can say for my family, right, in Long Island, I was wondering how did we go from being landowners, being indigenous, being one of the first to meet the Dutch and the Italians when they got off the boats, to teaching them how to farm, teaching them how to fish, even helping them learn how to survive. I mean, there's a story on that website I was telling you about that my ancestor told the story that some of the Jews, a lot of Jews came to Long Island too. There was one Jewish woman in particular. She didn't even know how to turn on the stove, and our families had to do pretty much everything to make sure these people survived once they got to our lands. So I'm wondering, how do we go from teaching and doing all this stuff for these people to the next minute we're working for them? When did the switch happen? And it wasn't always slavery, but it was a switch. It was a switch where we go from being the owners to now the workers. So it's birthright stealing.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I forgot the name of the book, but I was doing research for a paper in college, and I looked up different instances of where Native Americans actually owned slaves. And also, just reading about not just that, but just their interaction with quote unquote black people. Not saying where they're from, but they they would swirl a lot of times, date or marry with white people just for resources. That was kind of the thing. Just hypergamy has, it's just a long run. It's a very long running thing. It has a long history, and so that's what people were doing. And also read that in certain instances that the indigenous blacks, or just indigenous people, didn't say whether they were black or red or whatever the case may be, that they were actually ashamed of being associated with those of the slave class. But as again, like when you think about what kind of black we're talking about here, it's just very interesting to consider.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a truthful part of history. Some tribes did own, and some slaves did seek refuge to these tribes too. You had a lot of smaller tribes that actually were dismantled, um, maybe lost a lot of men in war. And the best bet they could do was go to another tribe for shelter and refuge, right? So that happened. It's not I mean, hell, I have a Mohawk lineage. If anyone knows the history of the Mohawks, they're ruthless people. Okay, they'll capture you and bring your ass right back where you're supposed to be at. As Mohawks had a very bad reputation. I'll say that amongst a lot of indigenous nations in the New England area because of how ruthless they were and how cold-hearted they were. But that's the history that I cannot change as far as where my people are from. And it's funny because even that website, I've told you about again, another ancestor of mine who was explaining the Mohawk ancestry, she had a story that a lady saw her in public. We're talking about 1940s, I think this happened. A lady saw her in public and was like, just looked at her and said, "I hate you." And she's like, "Why you hate me?" She's like, "I hate you." And the lady was like, "I'm a Shinnecock Indian." And my ancestor said, "Oh, I'm Mohawk." And she said, "Well, that's why I hate you." And my ancestor was so like, "I don't get it." Like she just totally didn't get it. But now me learning more about who the Mohawks were, I'm like, oh, maybe who knows? This is, I mean, gang banging sets. I mean, it never. This is nothing new. Gang banging on sets, and not like this tribe, not like in this tribe. This tribe maybe sold out this tribe, or this tribe tried to do some dirty stuff to this tribe. Like this is tribal warfare worldwide. Unfortunately, but I would definitely take accountability and say that it's something that some of our ancestors got involved in. What their reasons were, I don't know. But we know that tribes didn't get along with tribes. This is prior to the European coming here. It's always been that way.
Yep. I mean, it's just human nature. Like we're just we're communal people, and we all like to be around like-minded people. And then there's other people, we just naturally look at them as the ops. You know, it's just nature. That's just how we are. So I mean, ideally, we like to, at least from my understanding, we like to just kind of be left alone to ourselves. But if someone, pulls up, there's going to be a problem because we're very territorial. It's just, again, it's just human nature. And I feel like when people look at all history, because I mean, Black people are indigenous everywhere. Like, if you search Black in
Everywhere.
anything, Black Asian, Black European, Black, Black African, like all of that, you're gonna find something because we're everywhere. And I mean, all skin folk are not kinfolk, but I mean, again, like the whole concept of like even like world peace is just like asinine because we're just different. We're different, like different things, and we can't be all up on each other like that because we're just different people. So I learned a lot. Now, as far as somebody that wanted to know more about their history or the lineage, or maybe they think they're from Africa and they're really not. Like, does the DNA? I know you said that you didn't do a DNA test when you went to search your
Right.
lineage. I mean, besides the fact that the government would have your DNA and may implicate you in a crime you didn't commit, was there any other reason why you didn't do that?
Um, I mean, I didn't feel the need to do it. First off, I mean, some of these DNA things are kind of pricey. That's number one. My ancestry only cost me like $12, $10 to do. Is that? I did it by myself. And I already had a lot of stuff from my family already. So it was no need. Now, if you're going to talk about my Caribbean lineage, that might be a different story, right? Um, my dad, that's a journey that I have to take with my father. Um, my father, he has to be ready to take that journey with me too. I've been trying to get him on board, be a little more curious, but I feel like sometimes when you have your own, I guess, country or nation already, you feel like it's kind of pointless to go too far back. It's like, well, I'm already here. I'm already a Bayesian. I'm already from Barbados. But I got to go far back for at this point.
Mhm.
And if I come from Africa, all right, who cares? It's kind of like that kind of attitude. But
Right.
here in America, because we deal with a lot of things face on, we have no choice but to figure out who we are, in this country. So like I said, for me, it's more so with my dad, figuring out more of his lineage, where he's from. I know already I do have Irish in my family over there. Um, my second great grandmother, she was an Irish woman, and she was a melanated woman. So a lot of people don't talk about the melanated Irish that were exiled out of Ireland and pushed into the Caribbean and even to America. You don't talk about that part. There's actually a book, if anyone's interested in that. It's a book called To Hell or To Barbados. And it talks about it's called ethnic cleansing of Ireland. And it talks about how they pushed out a lot of the what they would call considered the degenerates and of course your ethnic Irish people to the Caribbean elsewhere. So, as far as like I said, my father's lineage, I'm curious too, but he has to be ready, he has to be
Right.
ready and willing to open up to me. So we can probably do that together.
Right. And I feel like also like one, we ain't getting no younger, in the words of Jagged Edge. And we need to really touch base with these elders of ours because they're a very valuable resource. It's good to hear it firsthand as opposed to, you know, looking through books and stuff like that. And honestly, that's a good bonding experience, like trying to find your history with your elders, with your parents, with your grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I know the internet says, fuck your parents and blah, 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 but, you know, maybe that's
Now
for a reason.
let me tell you that the indigenous people that I rock with, we all about family. In fact, we love to treat each other like family. So we don't tell you F your grandma. You need
Hmm.
grandma. You need grandma just like you need yourself, like you need your mama, like you need your granddaddy, even the ones that you have not yet met, or even the ones that may have passed on before you were able to meet them. All these people make you. And a lot of times what I find is that, not to dig at Pan Africans or nothing, but um, they run away from genealogy. They want the DNA test. And a lot of times some people do that because they can't reconnect with current family members they do have, or they don't want to deal with history. But see, everyone's history is different. And I tell people that all the time. Yes, I've worked with people who did the genealogy and they did find slavery. And I worked with others who found out that their great grandfather, their third great grandfather, was literally a college professor in the late 1700s. You know what I'm saying? And a melanated man at that has a historical marker and lived in the South. So everyone's story and how we get to where we are is totally different. And if we're willing to accept that and we're willing to just figure out where we fit in this narrative, in this story, you won't have to run away from grandma. You don't have to run away from your family. You need your family. I know some of us got some janky families. I know. But let me tell you, I have figured out, even in my years of living, no matter what, it's the warmest feeling to have a support system. You know, even if you feel like you got to have that support system spiritually. And I know some people like to worship their ancestors and their own spiritual systems. But either way it goes, don't run away from your grandma. Don't run away from your mama. And when they tell you stuff, don't think they're lying. Don't call them liars. You know, I've heard people say, well, my grandma told me she was Indian, but I thought she just had Alzheimer's. And it's like, oh, but some random white man told you you're from Africa and you believe it. Grandma told you this, but because grandma don't have the right, you didn't want to hear it. And that's really the truth. Because this system has taught us to neglect our elders. They're crazy people. Don't listen to those people. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just traumatized with slavery. They don't know what they're talking about. And you come to talk to your grandmas and they'll tell you, well, shit, only one of our cousins was a slave. Or this person became a slave, but the rest of us, we didn't become a slave. They didn't have everybody in bondage. You know, some people only have about one or two people that was in bondage. And those people probably was able to get out the contract or get out their slavery, pay their way out of slavery. You know, so as I'm telling you, the stuff I see when I do people's stories, it will blow your mind about how slavery really went. It would blow your mind about how many melanated slave owners there were in the South.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to blow your mind. I'm telling you, they got books on it. I've had people, I've recently did a guy's genealogy. Trying to find out his slave, the person that sold him was his own father. The father was a prominent lawyer. We're talking early 1800s, was a lawyer. Sold the son and told the son, I'm gonna sell you off, but you wouldn't want to leave behind your wife and kids. So now he sold the son, the wife, and the kids for $18 at that time. Down the street to somebody else. The father wrote a note to the new owner. It said, don't whip him because he's the type to kill you when you sleep. Okay. So the new slave owner went to the guy now and said, you gonna take my last name? And the guy told him, I came here this, and I'm gonna leave as this. I don't want to say the last name, but he said, I came here as this, and I'm gonna leave here as this. He didn't take that man's last name. In fact, he got out of slavery. We still trying to figure out how the hell he got out of slavery, but he got out of slavery, had two more kids that were now considered free, right? These two new kids were free. The other three, they were considered enslaved. joined the military, became a shoemaker, started his own shoemaking business, and now he has like a few land patents of like over 500 acres of land. Come on, this is a slavery story that they don't tell you these crazy stories that you be like, oh, wait, what do you mean? Oh, word. Why his daddy sold it? What? I don't know. All in this situation happened in Alabama. Okay, and it was they had written documents of who back then they would take an account of. It was like his biography of this guy. He was a shoemaker and he was a very prominent man of that town. So they had a biography of him, and that's how we get the story to read today. And it literally was, like I said, it blew me and the guy away. Like, wow, okay, your daddy, he told that man, I'm not taking your last name, you know. So they don't tell you that. They don't tell you how we fought back. They don't tell you how, we weren't playing a lot of that shit they was on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They make it seem like we just docile, we didn't fight back, weren't gonna do nothing about it. No, 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 no. We didn't go down like that. You know what I'm saying? And if we had to go down, sometimes we had terms and conditions on how we had to do that.
Right. And that's the whole thing. Like when you realize that you've been lied to, and the best way to lie to somebody is to give a half truth. If you give a half truth, like, yeah, there were slaves, but it wasn't just black slaves. There were red slaves and yellow slaves and white slaves. And sometimes the black slaves owned the white. I mean, sometimes the black owners had white slaves also. It wasn't just a whole thing across the board. And again, like people don't get it. They don't get it. They're so used to just. I feel like a lot of times people don't want to get it just because the programming is just so elite
Oh
that
yeah.
black people can't think that they came from prominence,
I
and
think
that's why
the,
they
the
don't.
worst the worst mistake we did was making slavery and African synonymous.
Mm,
Slavery has been going on for eons, unfortunately. Human beings have been used as currency for a long time, unfortunately. And I'm sorry, as of right now, I don't see it stopping, unfortunately. Somebody's gonna always be less fortunate and willing to do things for what they consider a better life. We see people do it today, voluntarily come to America and they'll work for next to nothing just to have a place somewhere, right? Voluntarily. I don't see it stopping. I don't. See, people don't talk about, we talk about transatlantic slavery, but no one ever teaches about the trans-Pacific slavery. No one teaches about the Asian slaves that came to North America, that came into Mexico. No one talks about how there were thousands of them coming here. And this was before an African slave came on any shores to the Caribbean or to America, North America. Okay. So we get a one-sided history, like you said. It's biased, it's one-sided. And what it does is perpetually paint us in a light of being less than. So you'll have people that actually have a slave lineage, just like you or someone else, but they'll call you the slave. But they come from slaves too. But they'll never tell you that. They'll never admit it because they got the skin color to not have to admit it. So slavery, black and African, has now become like the holy trinity of black history now. No
yeah.
one cares about who you were before it. No one looks at the time period and how it lasted. A lot of times, this slave story that they tell, a lot of these slaves, they didn't stay that long on these plantations. I'm telling you, and it's not to dismiss the trauma these people were facing, but the way how they exaggerate a lot of this stuff, it's like, nah. The only difference between transatlantic slavery and trans-Pacific slavery is that when the slaves were freed in Mexico, the Asian slaves were freed, they were given the right to be called indigenous. They didn't have to go home. They weren't being told, take your ass back to Asia, go back to China, go back to where you come from, go back to the Philippines. No, they became indigenous. And there's a book called, I think, Asian Slaves in Colonial Mexico. From Indians, I mean, from Asians to Chinos, or Chinos to Indians, something like that. But pretty much you're going to see the birth of what they call a Chino, and how Chinos go from being Chinos, the Asian slaves, Asiatic slaves in Mexico, then they become Indians. So now people are trying to figure out, well, how do we get an abundance of a certain phenotype in Mexico and on the Western Hemisphere of America? Because they were free. And a part of their agreement was that they'll be indigenous. They don't have to be removed from the land. Transatlantic slavery, we don't get a chance to be indigenous even if we are. Every day, they remind us how we are not from here. And mind you, we're on the same landmass. It's not even like we're in two different countries. Same landmass, two different results. East side of the country, told to go back to Africa. West side of the country, told they're indigenous, they're Chinos, they're Indians, and they got tribes and reservations, all types of stuff going on up there. How you got one landmass, two different results from the same time period of slavery? Questions that, we never get answers to. Not even the Pan-Africans start to wonder why that is. Not even them are trying to figure out, as scholars as some of them claim to be. Well, why is the East Coast treated differently than the West Coast? Why is the Southeast, where they claim predominantly Black people are, why are they being told to go back to Africa, but these people over here are not being told to go back to Asia? Things that make you go,
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that, Africa was given entitled Africa from someone that wasn't Black. But that's another. Let me stay on topic. So I know that you did say that you wanted to revisit later on in the show, which it's later now. Why they wanted to colonize America in the first place because of what was under the land. Did you want to expound upon that?
Yeah, I can briefly do that. I study a lot about ancient America, which also helped me want to learn more about my direct ancestry. So we're not taught about the pyramids in America. We're not taught about the mounds. We're not taught about the earthworks all around us, everywhere we are. A lot of us don't even know we got pyramids around us. A lot of our buildings are built on pyramids. You don't even know it. We're not taught a lot of these things for a reason. In South Carolina, as we speak, they are digging up an ancient city in South Carolina. Where they said slaves and it ain't nothing but slaves and pig feet down there. Yeah, that's what they tell us. No. Okay. They always been wondering what's underneath the ground here. That was the whole purpose. In the 1500s, the story goes that Spanish explorers went to Peru looking for the city of gold. They heard way in Europe that in South America, there's gold underneath the earth. And they wanted to find it out. They wanted to find out where the stuff is at. So some of the Spanish explorers, they did multiple expeditions coming to South America. And every time, pretty much being told that the local people tell them, we don't know where it's at. We don't know what you're talking about. They'll find the tombs, which would be the entrances to these tunnels and caves. But it was locked, they couldn't get in. So they would ask the locals again, can you help us figure out how to get inside? The locals don't help them. Now we're in 2021. Articles are coming out. They finally got into these tombs and these tunnels in South America. And they're noticing that something precious had to be traveling underneath this ground because these are tunnels, and these tunnels are connected. They're interconnected with all the major cities in South America right now, even up to Central America. So the way how they know that something precious is being traveled through these tunnels, because the rocks on the floor are speckled. So whoever created these tunnels made sure the floor was non-slip. So this is how, these excavators are pretty much saying, people, they were transporting something they didn't want to fall. It had to be something very precious. In Ecuador, they recently just found a gold, pretty much a large golden tablet. It's full of this gold, pure gold in tablets, the words on it. It looks very similar to what you would say the emerald tablets look like. If anyone knows about Tahuti and Thor. And they're still trying to figure out, what's this about? People have speculated it was giants that built this. I mean, a lot of speculation about what's underneath the ground from North America to South America. See, prior to colonization, we would just call the Americas or America. There was no North, no Central, no South, or Caribbean because we weren't separated like that. Technically, Central America is a land bridge. Okay, if the Middle East is considered North Africa, then there's Central and South America is considered America. Point blank period. So what they're finding underneath the ground, matter of fact, in South Carolina right now, you can Google it. You can get a permit to go dig up gold right now. That's how much gold is in South Carolina, gold nuggets. Okay, you can go find it if you want to. You can get a permit for it though. There's so much resources and hidden secrets underneath the lands here. And it makes you wonder why they're not teaching you about it. And why they're still digging this stuff up. And it's because it was always a conquest for America. The conquest never ended. You know, the cities, the buildings, and the jobs, always a distraction because it doesn't exist. This matrix that we're setting right now doesn't exist. But what does matter to these particular people is what's underneath the ground in America. The largest pyramids in the world are in America. They're in Mexico. One of your largest pyramids is hidden inside of a mountain. Think about how intricate you had to be and how advanced in civilization you had to be to build a pyramid, detailed. We're talking step pyramids inside of a mountain. A lot of the pyramids were built in the earth here in America, from north to south. So there's a lot, like I said, it's a lot of little secrets they don't teach us about. No one teaches us about the Ankh-shaped temples in Mexico. Okay? They don't show you how Mexico plays a very key role in the ancient world, as does Peru. As a matter of fact, the city of Caral in Peru, it has right now been coined one of the oldest civilizations on the planet. And they still are digging it out. They didn't even get a chance to dig out all the way the whole entire city, but they already know for a fact it's old. But you know why they know that? Because they already have been heard about this. This is the 14, 1300s. Like, think about this. The Aztecs were only just in the 1300s. That wasn't that long, 1100s, 1300s. Like, Aztecs weren't that long ago. Okay? And the Spanish explorers came and conquered the Aztecs. So they were always coming on here expeditions in waves. Columbus, I'll close here with Columbus. Even people have speculated, why did Columbus come to America? They tell us the story that he was lost. He was trying to find India. And that's why he named the people Indians. But at the time, India was called Hindustan. So how you can call a set of people something that didn't exist? That don't make sense. So maybe, in theory, maybe, Columbus was also looking for the city of gold. They also heard about the Fountain of Youth in Florida. They also heard about the springs in Wakanda, which is in Illinois. If anyone doesn't believe me, you can research. It's called WACOUNDA, Wakanda, the real Wakanda, not the Marvel, not the Hollywood made up story they give you that's across the waters. I'm talking about real Wakanda.
And not Atlanta.
With real, yeah, with real healing mystic springs that give you power. And unfortunately, these springs are drying up as we speak. But you can see pictures of it, of the real Wakanda here in North America. They heard about all this stuff. When Fernando de Soto came here, he met the Mississippians in Mississippi, and that whole Mississippian empire. They heard about Cahokia. Cahokia was one of the most largest ancient cities in North America, located right in the same region of Chicago, of Illinois. Southern Illinois, you have an ancient city called Cahokia. Cahokia would have been that time period's New York City. That's how many people were in Cahokia. Okay. They heard about all this stuff, okay? And they had to come see for themselves what was here, who was running things, what they wanted. And the quest for America, the quest for what's underneath the land here, is never going to stop. That's why they're digging around Cuba. And they just found an ancient city off the coast of Cuba. They're digging out right now. Or they're trying to dive and dissect. A lot of hitting histories here. And it predates a lot of ancient Kemet. Not that Kemet is not a great civilization, because people think if something predates the other means it's not great. No, it's great. It's still great. I mean, now you even have a pyramid in Indonesia that's just as old as the ones in Mexico. It might even rival to be the oldest. We don't know. But what we do know is that they're currently still digging underneath our earth here in America. The same thing they do in Africa. They only tell you about what they do in Africa, but they never tell you about what they do in America. They never tell you about the stuff they're stealing from the people here. You know, the giant bones they're finding underneath some of these pyramids. You know, they don't tell you a lot of the stuff that they find here. So I guess one can wonder what they're really looking for, you know, here in America.
On that note, if someone wanted to learn more about their family history or anything like that, you said that you help people do that?
I do. I do try to use my spare time to help people find their ancestry. You definitely can shoot me an email. I'll give you my email, Dwayne, so you can actually put that somewhere. And I definitely will try to put you in my schedule somewhere so I can help in some type of way. Yeah.
And if anyone wanted to find you, support you, or anything like that, where can they go?
Well, definitely you can find me on Instagram. I'm XO Shinjor. I do screen a lot of people who try to add me on there, so don't come here trolling. Say that right now. You can also find me. Sometimes I am on Clubhouse. Um, my name is Shan Elliott on Clubhouse, or Shan Jor. And that's pretty it. That's pretty much it. It's where you can find me. And if you have any more questions, I definitely won't mind answering those questions in a video chat.
Okay, thank you so much. This is very informative, and it wasn't all Kang. Some